Mine? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're just about to make a start. Okay, all right, we're going to make a start, ladies and gentlemen. Is my mic on? They can't hear me. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to make a start. I hope everybody is suitably fed and watered. Welcome back. Welcome back to those of you online as well. My name is Nick Waith. I'm the Chief Executive of the Energy Institute. The Energy Institute has the pleasure and the pride of hosting Powerful Women. And I also sit on the board of Powerful Women. This is always the tough slot where everybody has eaten a little bit too much for lunch, and so I am going to make sure we keep this really high energy. We've got a brilliant panel, and we're going to be sort of talking through this sort of final push. We had a lot this morning from Monica, from Cordy, from Mia on this final push to 2030. It's not that long away, and so we're going to really talk through how we get there to meet Powerful Women's targets. So let me introduce our panel. So to my left, we've got Saima Rasool from Anthropy. We've got Marina Skinner from DESNZ. We've got Yasmin Ali from RW and John Evans from Subsea 7. So a brilliant panel. And actually, I was going to ask each of them, because I think we've got an hour and a bit for this panel, just to introduce themselves so you know their background and their perspectives, and just to say a little bit about your personal DEI journey before we get into the discussion. Saima.
Fabulous. So, hi. Ooh, I don't know if my mic is on. Oh, it is. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Saima. So, I co-chair the Emerging Leaders Programme for Anthropy. So, Anthropy is the UK's largest gathering of essentially leaders. It's 2,500 people over a 3-day national convener out in the Eden Project, and it's all about inspiring a better Britain. So, everything from sustainability, so that's where energy comes in, but all the way to our global perspective, health, and futures. And the Emerging Leaders Programme is essentially the bursary programme for anyone aged 18 to 30 who's seen as sort of a change maker to attend Anthropy on a bursary ticket and essentially mingle with all those great leaders that are out there. So yes, and my personal journey into DEI, I'm a first generation university graduate. I'm also a what's it called? Yeah, I'm a Kashmiri woman. I'm a woman, and yeah, and I'm also a practicing Muslim woman as well, actually, to add to that. So yeah, loads of layers of sort of diversity there, but also intersectionality, which is something I'm super passionate about. So yes.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Marina Skinner. I'm a director in the Department of Energy Security Net Zero. It's a lot of syllables there. And even more, my whole job title is Director of International Net Zero, Energy and Trade. So lots of words, lots of syllables, but basically I do international energy and a bit of kind of trade net zero policy. And as part of that, one of the things that we as a team have been sort of trying to champion a little bit is helping the UK sort of demonstrate support on international energy agenda initiatives. So there's a Clean Energy Ministerial Initiative and various other things, and the International Energy Agency. And I mean, my personal journey, probably fewer diverse metrics, to be quite blunt. But yes, I'm a woman and I work in energy, and I've worked in energy for a really long time, and it's got slowly more sort of balanced, I guess, but it's been quite slow. And working in DESNZ and before that BEIS and before that DEC, you know, there's actually, it's not been the quickest revolution, but we are getting there. And so it's really just a personal interest. And then on the international stage, when you do engagement, you do events, when you meet other women who are facing kind of similar but very different challenges at the same time, I just find it super interesting. So I just really enjoy being here and basically listening to lots of inspiring people. Thanks.
Yasmin.
I'm Yasmin. I'm also a woman. To add to the list. Got kind of three parts to my introduction. So my career, I'm a chemical engineer by background. I've been in energy for the last 15 years in private and public sector. And my job at the moment is leading a team in RWE developing software for large-scale batteries. The second part is my side career, so I do quite a lot of public engagement. I love talking about engineering and energy and getting people excited about it. As part of that, I'm a trustee for 2 STEM education organisations, and I write and talk. And last year I had a book published, which I brought along. And this, I would say, this book is for friends and family who don't understand what you do in the energy sector to explain what that's all about. And then my DE&I journey, I think I've ended up here by a series of happy coincidences. And what I see now is lots of women and people from underrepresented backgrounds missing out on these incredible careers. So I would like to open some doors and show people outside of the traditional workers in the energy sector these opportunities.
Thank you. John.
You know what I'm going to say. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Evans. I'm the Chief Executive of Subsea 7. So what is Subsea 7? So we're an international energy contractor. We work in around 40 countries in the world with 15,000 employees. And we're the plumbers and electricians that put all this stuff in for our clients in the utility and in the hydrocarbon sector. I've been with the same company for 39 years. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. And I joined what was a fascinating offshore oil and gas industry in the mid-80s, which was the economic engine of this country at the time. For me, what I've seen, though, is the energy transition is real, and we do a huge amount of work in building offshore wind farms, not just here in the UK, but in Europe, Taiwan, and in the US. What has been very interesting for me in my journey, in my career, Subsea 7 has 108 different nationalities working for us. So the energy sector is fantastic at having a huge spread of nationalities working. But since day one, we have been very, very poor on the gender split between male and female. It is a very engineering, heavy dominated industry. And so in 2020, when I was invited to join the Powerful Women group, I very much wanted to be part of that. And I think we are making progress. I think somebody said it earlier, not as quickly as we should as an industry, but I think we have a great vehicle here and a great opportunity to talk about what are we going to do to create that huge untapped potential that we have to bring a wider group of people into a fantastic energy sector, as you said.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. And to kick us off, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists to respond to this, and it's sort of, the first question is a bit of a leading question, but why is it so important that Powerful Women continue this journey? And at the same time, I think, what are the consequences if we don't meet those targets by 2030 of 40% at all levels in the energy sector, in the UK energy sector? What are the consequences of that? Who'd like to kick us off? Go for it.
I can. I think for me, the energy system is for people, and it has to reflect the users. So the people who are designing and maintaining it need to reflect society, and society is 50% female, so that should be reflected in the workforce. And if we don't do that, I think we have an opportunity here in the energy transition to make the energy system better. And if we miss out on the talent of women in the country, then we're not going to design something that's as good, and we will have to spend more time in the future fixing the stuff that we didn't do right now.
I'll come in, thanks. I completely agree with that. And I also think that it's a classic kind of diversity of view means that you're just seeing the same problem with that more 360 view, which means you can actually see different solutions or just see ways in that are more full to the whole problem that you're trying to tackle. And I think just that is so important, and I can see it in the conversations I have both within the UK but also internationally, where if you only have one type of person of whatever type answering a question or looking at a problem, you just don't see enough of the solution. You're going to out engineer loads of really good solutions that you wouldn't see anyway. I also think, I've got what you're saying about STEM and what you're doing on STEM careers and things like that. It's so important for young people to be able to see this as an opportunity, and just genuinely like the economic loss that we'll get if we just by mistake take out a whole part of the population from contributing enormous brain power to the problem. And it feels like it's something that we could sort of zombie walk into without thinking about it, and that's just a real pity. And then finally, I would say, especially internationally, the impacts of climate change are extremely much more like heavy and worse on women. And so if you don't have them as part of the conversation, bringing their own experience of what climate impacts have, then you're never going to get the right solutions for anybody.
Thank you. Simon, I mean, you bring a sort of out, I know you've worked in the energy sector, you've got a perspective on it, but you're now outside of the sector looking into it. I mean, Can you share some of your perspectives?
Sure. So one of the perspectives I really want to bring to this conversation, and as sort of also Minister MacDonald alluded to earlier, is in the energy sector we can't stay in a bubble, right? So a piece of research that I want to sort of quote here is something called the King's College London Women's Global Leadership Institute's Tradwife report. So what that research found, and bear with me here, so if you don't know what a tradwife is, it's alluding to this concept of traditional gender norms where women stay at home, have children, and a man goes out to work. So they asked the question that it's a man's job to earn money and a woman's job is to look after the home and family. The age group that scored the highest to positively agree with that are women aged 18 to 34. They asked women from 18 to 75 plus, and it's the young women who are saying, yep, that's what I agree with. And the reason, when they delved into this research, so please definitely go read the report, this is a plug for them, they have no idea I'm talking about this, but it's because they said that the current job market, the current world they live in, they feel as though it's impossible to manage things like childcare and being a mother or being a wife and having a great career and a job. So I think that's super important to remember. And if we bring it back to Powerful Women, it's crucial because Powerful Women is all about we role modeling that leadership, we're getting that message from the top to say we are creating a system where people can thrive. See, we thrive in the light comes. But exactly that, we need to create those systems in place where women feel as though there is actually a place for them in not just the energy world, but the working world, so that we don't quite literally go back to the 1950s. So, yeah.
It's sort of extraordinary when you say that, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you said that on the briefing call, I was sort of stunned that generation of people who should be at the heart of new careers in the energy sector have that perspective. So, I mean, let's go elsewhere on the panel. I don't know. John, you've been part of the Leadership Coalition for 5 years now. Maybe give the audience a bit of a sense of how that has evolved, but also what is it within the Leaders Coalition that we need to do over the next 5 years to drive the change, and what happens if we don't do that?
I think for me, if we just stand a little bit further back on the energy transition, the energy transition is a huge opportunity and a huge challenge all wrapped up in one. We've got to find new skills, we've got to bring new people in, we've got to create new careers. It's a fantastic opportunity for society if we choose to take it. And therefore then we need everybody to be part of that. It's not a certain group of people, it's not history gets you to that point, the opportunity is ahead of us. Secondly, whichever way we look at it, there is an aging population in the energy sector here in the UK today. So again, we need to make sure we bring new people in, young people in, old people in, whatever way you want to look at it, from different backgrounds to help us take this fantastic opportunity forward. Because again, we will just end up with just doing the same stuff again, and we'll make mistakes, and then we'll learn in 10 years that we should have done something different. So for me, as a leader of a company that works not just in the UK, but all around the world, it is vital for us to make our industry, our sector, interesting for people to come in, because it is a great industry. There are fantastic opportunities in there. And we just have to make it as inclusive, as possible in terms of making opportunities available. So for me, that's the key to unlocking this, is to make sure that we do two things. We sell our story well, which is one of the challenges that we've had. And I know when I first joined on Powerful Women, the question was, why can't more girls join STEM type topics? But what I found fascinating when we did quite a bit of research into that is we lose them at 13 or 14 years old. We don't lose them at 18 going to university. They're out of the picture. So again, societally, we as an industry need to recognize that we need to get interest in our industry, interest in the opportunity there before they go down different paths. So again, it's multifaceted, and over the 5 years, what has helped me is, first of all, there's a peer group of companies that are interested in the topic, want to learn, and are very free in sharing. Right? We've shared what we've learned, we've shared the mistakes we've made as well. And I think that's a fantastic tool to have in the UK here, that we're prepared to do that very openly, and the conversation is very open. I think we've come on a long, long way. The challenge I see today is that the energy transition is very disrupted at the moment. The countervailing pressures of society at the moment means that we can't get blown away from the path that we're trying to follow. So that's maybe a different topic, but one that we need to be very careful about, I think, Nick.
Well, that's a perfect segue to where I was going to go next, actually, because, I mean, we are facing really severe headwinds right now on both the energy transition and on DEI. I was at ADIPEC last week. It's the world's largest energy event, 200,000+ people in Abu Dhabi. And the narrative was the energy transition is over. It's an energy addition, the world needs more energy, AI, et cetera, et cetera. And so the tide has sort of turned against that. It's very much sort of tied up in everything we're seeing in the media, in social media, clearly in the US, but in the UK and globally. I mean, we can't ignore that. I think there's a link between DEI and transition, energy transition as well. We had some uninvited guests this morning shouting loudly. That kind of disrupted us for a few minutes, but wasn't terribly effective in getting their message across. So what should our response be to that? How should we fight those forces that are conspiring against us right now?
I'm happy to. I think we need to just be incredibly clear about what the facts are. And the facts are the transition is happening, and renewable energy is cheaper. And a lot of vested interests will absolutely, and understandably, that's the whole point of a vested interest, right? You tell your own story, and the story that suits you and suits your returns. It's the way the world works. And we can't just pretend and stick our head in the sand. But that doesn't mean that we should be quiet. We should be shouting loudly about what the facts are. And I think we need to be really clear about where we are in the story. If we, in the sort of 2010s, it was all about ambition setting and long-term targets and big targets. We literally always knew that this would be the most difficult decade. I remember in 2018 saying, the 2020 is going to be difficult. And here we are, 2025, it's really difficult. We knew it was going to be difficult. It is difficult, but that doesn't mean that we just give up. And we absolutely, as the Secretary says, don't believe the doomsters. There's a lot of doomsterism going around, but it's just the facts on the ground are not that. And that's what we need to shout about. And we definitely need to think about how we sell that story. And I think too much we've just relied on, being the kind of cool thing, climate change. And actually, now we're not that, to be blunt. How do we sell our story, the true story, in a way that lands with the people on the different channels that they use for communication as well? That's absolutely important, but that doesn't actually change the facts on the ground, which is what we need to focus on.
Thank you. I was going to jump to Yasmin. I mean, you work for a company that's sort of, got a foot in each side of the energy system at the moment. I know it's transitioning. You're also working for a German company which has a different perspective, a different sort of approach to DEI. Mm-hmm. I mean, any sort of lessons you can share from what you're seeing?
I think maybe on DEI we can quite easily rebrand that,
yeah.
or highlight that it's a benefit to everyone. It's not the focus isn't on one particular group. If you bring in a good practice for women or anyone who works for an organisation, it's going to benefit everyone. So I can talk about some of the opportunities that I've come across in my career, if you want to cover that now.
Sure, sure, please.
Have a look at my notes again. I think things that I've seen over the last couple of years, the increased equity in general that I was impressed with. So I worked in DESNZ when it was BEIS, and that was the first time I came across all roles were advertised as part-time, and that when you went to interview for a role, it didn't matter if you were going to take it full-time or part-time. Yeah. The organisation just accommodated for that when they picked the right person. I saw job shares, which was absolutely mind-blowing to me. I had never seen that before, taken up by men and women, and at quite senior level as well. And it works. You will have seen it too. So that was great. And then in RWE, about maybe a year or 2 years ago, 3 months fully paid paternity leave was introduced. And this was something that Chris McDonald mentioned this morning. And I think we have had men take this up who have had babies, and some of my colleagues, what I noticed is when they came back, they experienced that feeling of being out of work for a period of time, coming back and not knowing what's going on, not remembering how to do their job, and it really increased their empathy, I think. So that's a real added benefit. And I wanted to say 3 months is great, but NatWest and Aviva offer 6 months for any parent, so I think we can go even further. Flexible working as well is available. And one more point around opportunities and leadership training. So I have benefited from leadership training in RWE, and not only did I gain skills, but the networking and the people that I met doing that leadership has been incredibly beneficial. So someone that I met on one of these trainings said to me, "We have a role going for a team lead, I think you should apply." And to be honest, if I had seen that job description, I wouldn't have looked past the title, because it was all about software. I don't know anything about software. I've been doing the job for 6 months, and it's great. So just having someone meet you and bring up these opportunities is really beneficial.
Brilliant.
Apologies.
That's okay. I think that was
Sorry, that wasn't.
And that's on that point of equal parental leave, we talked about that at the Leaders Coalition this morning, because the Minister brought that up just before we came into the conference. And it's sort of interesting, because when I raised that, I think there's a little bit of pushback from the sector. Well, it's no good if the men don't. We've introduced it, but the men aren't taking it. But there's still a lot of companies and organisations that have not introduced it. And I just want to make a shout out for, if your company does not have equal parental leave, you should be asking it, whether you're a male or female, whether you're a parent, not a parent. I think it is in society's interest to do that. And I get the point on culturally, it's still difficult, even if it's there. But if it's not there, you're never going to break that cycle. So more to do on that. And I want to come to you, Simon, because Anthropy organises this amazing event, and I think I'm going to have to go at the end of March down at the Eden Project, where you bring people together to have these discussions. How are you bridging these these differences of views?
Yeah, so in Anthropy, our founder is a man named John O'Brien, MB. So he's fantastic if you know him. And he has a saying, and it's quite literally plastered on loads of walls across Anthropy, and it goes, "Leave your ego and silo at the door." And the beauty of Anthropy, particularly this year, the upcoming Anthropy in 2026, March 2026, is we're talking all about united. How do we become more united as a nation, right? And that's all about not being the same, but getting along. And one of the key things is, first of all, reframing how we're seeing, our divisions essentially. And instead of seeing it as a challenge, perhaps reframe it to see it as an opportunity where we can rewrite what's going on right now and reframe it to something better. And then also just understanding the value of doing that. So things like having shared paternity leave, like what is the value of that? Because, it's not just a business value, but it's also much wider values, things like increased productivity, a positive culture that then seeps into other realms within the business. A great example I give is this year I've been working with the Royal Voluntary Service on supporting them with the new digital volunteering platform called Govo. I'm sorry, I'm like plugging loads of things here, but one of the pieces of research that came out of that was employee volunteering done right can actually can create over £5,000 worth of productivity per managerial employee. So you might not think, your volunteering day that you probably haven't taken for a couple of years is actually leading to good, but it's the skills that you're building in that volunteering and the positive impact you have that you then bring back to your day job is actually creating tangible business value. And it's that sort of language that we need to then start taking to the leadership levels. And that kind of brings me on to my next point about storytelling. Coming with empathy, and that's something we do at Anthropy, is we have sort of just a bit of without making it sound like a cult, we do have a bit of, kind of what's respectful in Anthropy, and that is respecting everyone's views. We might not all have the same view, but we respect each other and we hear each other out. So for example, last year we had Kemi Badenoch as our keynote, and there were some people who were like, what on earth, why are we giving her a platform? And there was others that were like, actually, well, if we're really going to walk the talk of allowing everyone's views in the room, let's hear it and let's see what they have to say, and let's all come together and see what we can do for that joint future. Because like you said, there's just so many divisions off. There's people that are like, our protesters this morning who are probably sitting there going, stop all fossil fuels. And then we have people on the other end that are really frankly just constantly digging. So it's kind of trying to find that middle path and that way forward, for sure.
I love that. And just my own little plug, if I may now. International Energy Week, 2 years ago we had Just Stop Oil and OE UK on stage together. And actually, it was the most, they didn't agree on very much, but it was the most constructive conversation that took place. So you can go to International Energy Week in February and Anthropy in March. But I think I'll come back to the storytelling point in a minute, because I think that's really, really important. I want to just turn to John briefly on that. You mentioned, Simon, this sort of united as a nation, and we're not united as a nation. We're not united as a planet right now. And I think part of my reflection of that is we sit in nice echo chambers in London, and we heard from Dan some of the statistics on what the transition means for people on an average family wage of 600 and something pounds a week. As we talk about all those 400,000+ new jobs, we know there are redundancies taking place right here, right now, in the northeast of Scotland, in Aberdeen and elsewhere. I mean, John, you're working on some of that. What's your perspective on how we address those people who feel just cut out from and threatened by the transition and threatened by DEI?
If we maybe just go right the way back to the last question. The world needs energy, right? The world wants to improve the standard of living for everybody in the world. So in every country in the world, people want more energy. So society has to find that mix of energy. And I'm in a slightly different place. I think the world will take a bit of everything. Every single type of energy that we can generate, we will be generating it in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. And each country will prioritize different energy sources, different energy securities and such like. But what is interesting is we have a very large operation in Aberdeen, which does oil and gas work. We also have a very large operation in the UK that does wind farm work. At the moment, we employ 2,700 people in oil and gas in the UK. We employ 300 people in wind. Right? That's the reality of the maths, if you look at it that way. I'm lucky at the moment that I can deploy all those British engineers and British project people on projects internationally. But that's not a long-term answer to how we get long-term sustainability in the business in the UK. But coming back to the question about how we manage it, the story is about allowing everybody to say their story, all right? And because we'll probably need a bit of everything, everybody can emphasize the different parts that need to be. I'm a service contractor. I build what my clients want. If my clients want me to build a gas pipeline, an oil pipeline, a wind farm, a carbon capture system, I build what society asks us to build, if you know what I mean. We've got a big operation in Texas. Texas is a fascinating place to work in. It's the largest offshore wind producer in the world. Onshore. So Texas has gone to onshore wind straight away. No problem whatsoever. Right at the advance of that industry, right about as far as it can go. So we do have to watch the echo chambers we live in, right? Because again, there are groups of people in many different countries who have views that we need to be able to mix the energy sources together. The common thread that runs through all this, though, is we need to make the opportunity sets open to everybody, irrespective of whichever one of these energy sources each particular country wants to do. So whilst we've got the turbulence going on at the top, the work that Powerful Women needs to do needs to keep going through all this, right? The opportunities we've discussed, the changes in employment terms, the opportunities that can be there is part of how we do this. But if we get distracted one way or the other, I think we will really be set back as an industry. So for me, it's about keep working on the D&I initiatives that we're doing, and each company and each country are doing different things. It's interesting, in Subsea 7, we have D&I initiatives in over 30 countries in the world. So it's not just a UK story. Very different story in our operations in Saudi, very different story in Australia, for example. And it's very interesting, our Australian operation, Australia actually went to the brink on D&I. They had this government report called Enough is Enough about the behaviour that was in Australia, societally, about how women were treated. So Australia society said we have to stop this and then put into place a way of handling the discussions. I find it very interesting that as I look around the globe, different countries are trying to do different things. We shouldn't knock any country for what they're trying to do and the speed at which they're trying to do it. Because again, you need society with you on this journey. We can sit here all day and talk about what we want, but we have to bring society with us. And that's the opportunity we need to create through Powerful Women.
Thank you. Marina, you want to jump in?
Well, just, I really agree, and I think that point about bringing society with you, like jobs is absolutely the way to do that. Because pretty much everybody has some contact with employment and relies on it in some way. And then by not either having the sort of flexibilities built in, like you were saying, whether people take it up or not, but if you don't even have them built in, then you're never gonna take advantage of anything. And I guess one of the things that I reflect on, having been in the civil service for a billion years, is that always ministers say, well, what does it mean for jobs? What does it mean for jobs? What do you mean for jobs? And you get your analysts to go away and sort of count up jobs. But what really struck me in the last year or so is that so many of the opportunities for jobs of the future in energy are in the same place as where either the jobs of the past of energy were, or in other sort of, to be honest, quite sort of deprived areas where there haven't been many jobs, certainly not any new industries coming up. And the opportunity of that is ginormous, but without having a plan for how to take advantage of that, plus the more flexibilities we can have, the flexibilities that the kind of jobs on offer can provide. You know, that you don't have to go into, you don't have to commute into a big city wearing a bowler hat and sit at a computer for 8 hours and then come home again. These are so much, the kind of jobs that you can have are really flexible. And now that we've, post-COVID, so much working from home means that the potential additional bits for flexibility are all there as long as you plan for it. And that's the current government having, we've got a jobs team and they've done a clean energy jobs plan. It's not perfect, it's not going to get us all the way there, but at least it's being consciously thought of from the beginning, and that's including a kind of social inclusion thing, aspect to it, and Forum, which, Powerful Women is great. We're very grateful for them to be part of. But I think the point for me is it has felt a little bit like we've talked about it but not thought about it. So now it feels like we're really, hopefully, thinking about it a lot more, and then you can actually put in the actions that will make the difference. But, this is also a bit of a plea for where you can see things in the industries that you're working in and the companies that you think government is holding you back on. We really want to hear those specific things that we should change that will make a difference, because otherwise we'll end up just sort of talking about it quite a lot, and that's not so useful.
And Marina, I think it's really positive to see the government sort of focus and joining up of DESNZ and DFE on sort of, the jobs. Jobs equals spending money, and spending money equals higher bills, which is not the direction we're trying to get to. I mean, how and I'm putting you on the spot here, but how does government sort of navigate, and I hate calling it the trilemma, but there is a tension here between investing. We've got AR7 coming up. I know people have had to rush off to get their bids ready from this conference this morning. I mean, how is government thinking about that?
Well, like I say, I mean, in terms of the trilemma in general, there's a lot of work. There's a significant amount of paperwork generated on it. There's a lot of brain power, and a lot of it is based on analysis and thinking what's the best advice we can give to ministers. But the way that you get good advice is you try and get a diversity of views. I don't mean in that case the sort of DE&I diversity, though that is also very welcome, and obviously that's why we try and have diverse kind of workforce within our department and within the civil service in general. But it's also trying to look at the problem from each angle so that you get the trilemma kind of fixed as much as possible. But yeah, in terms of jobs, it is things like trying to leave the silo and meeting your colleagues in DFE. Yeah. We are famously bad for leaving the silo at the door. But the whole kind of mission approach of this government was absolutely trying to make civil servants not work in such silos. I mean, obviously, we're desperately anti-change, but no. I love my echo chamber. But we are
seeing progress. Yeah. We are seeing progress. I think that's fair. So I want to come back to the elephant that's not in the room and link it to storytelling. So the elephant that's not in the room, and it's never in the room each year, are all the companies that are at the bottom end of the scale. So we've got companies who are really engaged on DEI, but the companies that tend not to be in the room, and actually wants to put their hand up and say that they are one of the companies that haven't got any women on their board, if feeling brave, are never in this room. So there's a question, and we grapple with this at the PFW board, as to how do we engage the companies that aren't yet even on the pitch. And I'm going to come to you, Yasmin, because we've talked about storytelling, and you are a storyteller because you've written a book. So how do we start having the conversation with the people that aren't in the room today?
I'm going to say the first thought that came into my head, which is always dangerous. But I don't know if we can vote with our feet, so the people working for those companies go elsewhere and show them that what they're doing is not acceptable. I know that's not maybe practical in many cases, but that would be one way of doing it. And then I think some of the points have been mentioned already around highlighting the benefits of diversity and inclusion on the bottom line. But it's probably about having a conversation with those companies, finding out what's important to them, and then telling them, tailoring the message so that it meets that thing that's important to them, I would say.
So I totally agree with the whole voting with the feet, but on the flip side of that, I'd love to give an example of what you can do if you're part of a company and you kind of want to drive change from the inside. So speaking about my experience when I worked at KPMG, and I know we had Send on the panel earlier, so one of the pieces of thought leadership I published at KPMG with the team was called Net Zero Influencers, and it was talking about how can we embed the voices of young professionals into leadership levels, essentially. So Dan rather helpfully earlier mentioned the Renewable UK Shadow Board. So that was one of the case studies in the report. You can go read that report. Yes, another plug. But yeah, go have a look at how you can embed the voices. And it's because that research found 72% of young professionals, so those aged under 35, felt that their voices weren't being heard at that leadership level, right? So what I did was went to Simon Verley, who's the head of energy and natural resources at KPMG, very politely asked him if we could have some budget to, fund this research, fund this report. Him being a great ally, said yes. So went ahead and did it, and also was, wrote it forward. We also partnered with WB directors. So Maria, where are you? I know she was in the room earlier at least.
In the room?
Oh, there she is.
There you go.
Yeah, so that's how I know Maria. And we produced essentially stats. And for me, I feel like stats are great drivers. So provided that research, and then that ended up eventually leading to KPMG taking that to the global level. So it was embedded in their strategy 3.0. So that was across 149 countries and 245,000 employees at the time. But also at the UK level, in the ESG sort of steering committee in their governance framework, they now have an under 30 sitting on that board to take into account, the young professionals' voices. So you can be inside a company, have the great allies, try and secure that budget. I know there was a point earlier about creating financing and actually giving resource to, all these initiatives, and you can do that to drive that change for sure.
I completely agree with that, inspirational. I also think you need to, so yes, those companies might not be at this conference, but they probably were at ADIPEC, right? So then at ADIPEC, there needs to be a panel event where it's not at all about ED&I kind of stuff. I've got that the wrong way around, but there we are. And yet someone talks about it.
Yeah.
And that is where I think we, allies and, female leaders who happen to be on the panel, but then bring it into a conversation about something that isn't directly about it, so they get the right people in the room and they're listening. That makes a big difference. And the sort of McKinsey report about diverse companies being 36% more profitable or something, that's kind of great stat to be able to bring in when you're talking about, something completely not about equality, diversity, inclusion. And then that just starts to sort of change the narrative.
Yeah. And I think, that's...
Nick, can I just come back to the trilemma and the discussion and about, companies that aren't here today? I'll tell you a story about our industry in the UK 10 years ago. We decided to get a group of SMEs out of the northeast coast of Scotland and take them with us around the globe, right? And today those companies work with Subsea 7 and our international peers globally. They're working for us in Saudi, they're working for us in Brazil, they're working for us in the US, because we needed a supply chain and a complete network of companies that were prepared to come and work with us. The problem you have today is the energy transition is very unstable for companies to plan. Is hydrogen going to happen this year? You and I talked about this before we started. Is it going to happen this year, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Do I put all my money on hydrogen now? So what you're seeing at the moment is the instability of the energy transition, putting a lot of pressure on a lot of the smaller companies in our industry. We're a big player. We work around the globe. We have a big balance sheet, so we can take the ups and downs. But the people we need to make sure that will be in this room in 5 years' time are our supply chain, because our supply chain grow up and become the next engine for the next generation of bringing young people in, and from whatever background, whatever ethnicity, or whatever male or female, they come in through those avenues. So we do need to remember that the energy transition is not a zero-cost activity, and the unpredictability of it has a huge challenge. Where I sit, it's important that we do keep investing and keep doing, but the noise above is quite loud at the moment, internationally, by the way, right? And every country we work in, it's a different story, by the way. Some countries want to go all in, countries want to go the other way. But I do think we do need to remember that the trilemma is a fourth piece that's becoming very clear as well. A lot of the new energies and the new technologies are not sustainable without government support. And if you can't sustain them without government support, where do you go, right? Because economically, will people build hydrogen plants, green hydrogen plants, if it's not economically viable to do so? So again, as we try to keep ourselves clear and straight on the D&I journey, we do need to recognize that noise above. But that's the nature of a transition. That's the absolute nature of a transition. You said it earlier, 2025, we were going to be right in the middle of it, and we are right in the middle of it. But I do think we need to remember that the companies that aren't in this room, they're not all bad, right? Some of them are fighting for their lives at the moment as well, right? And we need to respect that as well, because this transition is hard and it's brutal. We've seen some huge players in the renewable sector take a very, very hard time.
Yeah.
Not through lack of intent, not through lack of D&I policies, not through lack of wanting to be part of it. But the world is quite brutal on this stuff at the moment. So we need to navigate our way through that, I guess, would be my one observation. And the piece about you grow capability and you need to maintain that and look after it is also something important here. So the timing at which we switch things on and switch things off, it always takes longer to switch something on, and we tend to switch things off too early, is my experience over the years. So.
And I'm going to come back to Marina on sort of government's role with supply chain. We heard a bit from Dan on this morning. But how, and there's, if we had the regulator here, would also ask, what's the regulatory view on sort of enforcing DEI measures of some sort? But how is government thinking about it in terms of supply chain?
The government's done quite a lot since they've come in terms of sort of workers' employment rights. We've got the bill going through, and we've got in energy specifically, we've got the Clean Energy Jobs Plan, the Social Inclusion Forum as part of it, and all the work on things like reporting on the gender pay gap. And I think all of those elements are good in and of themselves. I think also, though, I think the focus on, for example, the forum within the energy plan, but also things like involving unions and promoting their involvement right from the beginning. I think that just means that what they're trying to do is to bake in the thoughts about workers' rights and how to make sure that the jobs that are being created are actually fit for purpose, whether it be flexibility or whatever the outcome is. The point is trying to get the thinking on that from the beginning, rather than creating a whole policy, announcing everything, and then being like, oh, by the way, let's count up the number of jobs at the end. So I think that is probably a difference of approach in the last year. Which I think, first I think it's really welcome. There's definitely more to do. I'm sure the Minister said that earlier. And absolutely, I think you heard his commitment. I wasn't here, unfortunately, but you heard his commitment to this and how much he passionately believes in it. Not believes, that's one word, sounds like a religion, but how passionate he is about it, and other ministers have been beforehand. And we certainly as a team have felt that. It's genuinely felt like a change. So I think that's really positive. And then I have forgotten to do a plug, so I'm going to take your approach. One of the things I run is, or I'm the sort of UK lead for, is we're part of an equality initiative run internationally, and we've got ambassadors. And we've just got our new 4 ambassadors for this next 2-year term. We've had some already, and that was great, but we've got our new ones. So we've got Tanya Kumar, Ruth Herbert, Rebecca Sedler, and Juliet Sanders. And the point is to try and really use people in quite diverse sort of roles, but to give them a platform, but also a kind of responsibility to have that voice. So like I was saying, if you're not, yes, we can put them on panels at events like this, but also when they're on a different panel, but they'll always be thinking that they can say that that's part of their role, that's one of the hats that they have. Yeah. And so you just always bring it into different conversations. So that's certainly one of the things that we're trying to do internationally. And I've noticed that internationally we have lots of moments or events where everyone talks a little bit about what they're doing. And that's great. But actually the UK is quite far ahead on a lot of this. Certainly in terms of data collection, my goodness, it's crazy. And I think we need to kind of make a bit more of that into sort of telling people the story about why it's been useful for us, but then also try and make more of the opportunity to learn from others. And absolutely, it is completely different in every country, but there are loads of people trying to do different things. And even if you don't do the same, you can take aspects from it. And so that's certainly part of our point of having ambassadors, and there's an ambassador network with all the other countries that are in it. And we're going to be co-chairing it for 6 months soon. So if anyone's got any ideas, of things you want us to focus on, let us know, let the ambassadors know if you know any of them, because we're really open for ideas and we really want to make it specific and action focused. So don't hesitate to come and tell me what your ideas are.
Well, that's a brilliant plug, and what a great set of 4 ambassadors. They're all
they're great.
superstars.
Can I add something
yeah,
just
please.
on the things that government have done? One quite practical example. So when I used to work in the green hydrogen team in RWE, and we applied for the hydrogen allocation round funding for projects, and part of that application form was what is your company doing around ED&I and skills? So we had to demonstrate that we were doing something on that. I think initiatives, it's quite simple, but it forces industry to do that.
And it sends a signal that it matters.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. We're going to open it up to the audience in just a minute. It's a nice segue into sort of individuals, because ultimately we've talked about governments, companies, and this is all big organisations and systems. But when it comes to individual humans within the energy sector, I mean, I'd love to hear a few of we've had a few examples already, but I'd love to hear a few more examples of, how you have either benefited from others accelerating your careers, and you gave a great example, Yasmin, earlier on, sort of, not knowing much about software and being the best job, and you being a really strong fit for it. But what other examples are there that you've either experienced or you've offered others in terms of their career journeys?
I don't mind kicking it off with my personal experience, and this is something that I suppose if I was speaking to 21-year-old Saima who had just graduated and was going into the world of work, what I would tell her is what a role model or someone who's going to open the door for you, it doesn't need to fit a certain characteristic. And what I mean by that is I think I had this sort of unconscious thing where I thought, in a workplace, it would be, a woman that would open the door for me, or really frankly, maybe, another ethnic minority woman that would open the door for me. And perhaps at the time, if I look back all those years ago, I think I had this sort of unconscious bias where I assumed that if there was perhaps a privileged white man in the room, that for some reason they might create a barrier or they might not understand where I'm coming from. And then thankfully throughout my careers, I must say that I've had mentors with many different characteristics, and dare I say a lot of them are just, the typical middle-class white man who on paper probably couldn't relate to me, but they made sure they kept that door open. So I think it's all about just always having in the forefront of your mind, not assuming anything about anyone, and just having that sort of idea that, anyone can open the door for you, and just being receptive to that, I would say. So, yeah.
I'm happy to go next. I think one of the things that, if I look back on sort of each time when I've been sort of thinking what will my next move be, that point about you only see yourself in roles where you can see someone who looks like you, I've realised is completely true. And it's actually, it was when basically that was pointed out to me. It was made really obvious. And they sort of, where do you see your career, future career? And I said, I think it was at the time I said cabinet office. And then someone said to me what? And I realised, I sort of checked back, someone actually said stop. And I think, it was a white man. It was not someone who sort of was trying to make a particular point, but sort of, why do you think that? And I absolutely suddenly realised I just literally hadn't seen myself. And actually that's really freeing, because then next time I thought about it, I made myself do the double check of, are you just doing it because that's what you can see someone who looks like you or not? And sometimes that still is totally part of my thinking. I'm not pretending it's not. But it has made me take that conscious moment of, no, actually, what do I want? What the things that I want from a career or from my next step, and then go and look for that, and trying really consciously not to be put off by job title or particular language or things like that. And I think it's just having that check, that moment of actually, why are you saying that? What are you really thinking? And trying to sort of take that layer off your own brain, I guess.
I love that. So, unconscious bias of others, but also unconscious biases
totally.
upon ourselves. Any other reflections?
For me, one of the things that I found very interesting the last 3 to 4 years is I took reverse mentoring from a senior leader in our company. She's in her mid-30s, and she was totally unsparing on me, right? which is fantastic, right? Absolutely fantastic, right? There was no prisoners taken in the discussion. But it certainly helped me as a leader get my thoughts straight about the missions and what we're trying to do here and how we keep going, because there's always things that buffet. So again, I found those conversations, I continue those conversations with that individual, fascinating. Because again, we're taking, so this is what they're learning in Australia, this is what they're trying in Brazil, this is what we're trying to do in the UK, what's the common themes, what can we do? And she was very, very brutal as well about, just keep in focus, don't get waylaid on the mission as well. So again, for me, I would encourage leaders, whether you're male or female, reverse mentor, take some reverse mentoring from somebody much younger than you. She had 2 children, so she was a working mother, working for us in the US at the time, from Norway originally, and very, very clear to me about the challenges that she faced as an engineer and her colleagues faced. And that really helps you as a leader make it real, if you know. Now, I can read reports, I can read stats and everything else, right? But the answer is, do you know what it's like, John, when one of your children is ill and you've got to do this, and how are we going to do this, and why does the company not do enough of this? Boy, does that make you think as a leader, okay, I better understand what our policies are on A, B, C, D, and E and such like. So again, reverse mentoring would be my advice to other leaders in this room. And whatever age you are, take reverse mentoring if somebody offers it to you, right? Because we talk about mentoring down the way. The reverse mentoring is fantastic the other way as well, by the way.
Yeah. Shall we open it up to the audience? So any questions? We've got a hand shot up over there, we've got hands everywhere. But let's go to the, just in the front there. We've got the mics coming round. The second row. Just down here, please, with the microphone. It's coming over. It's on its way.
Hello, I'm Joanne Powell. I'm glad you touched on mentoring. Could the panel think about mentoring is a bit of an art and skill, so there is good mentoring and this mentoring doesn't go anywhere. How much would you want companies to have a sort of formal mentoring? What's your experience? I know you touched on it a little bit, but in terms of how that can help people progress in their career.
I think both the mentor and the mentee need to want it and be committed to it for it to work, and you have to have the right chemistry. I've benefited from it formally and informally in my company and outside. I would encourage organisations to make it available if possible. I think it can be really helpful.
Any other thoughts?
I think the same on mentoring. It has to work for the 2 individuals to get the value out of it. And forcing it into the process, not so sure about that, but having it available for people who want to do it, I would certainly encourage it, both ways.
I think also sometimes it's about timing. And I think sometimes people think, oh, I've got to put something on my development plan, I'll put in mentoring. It's like, no, if you try and think of a reason for it, or is it the right time? Sometimes I don't have a specific reason why I need a mentor, but I kind of know that I need something, it's the right time. So time or reason. But I think if you've got neither of those things, then probably just wait for another time and wait for another year and do it then.
There was a question on just in the second row here, if we can get a microphone, and then there was a gentleman here with the glasses. Please.
Thank you very much. Maria Klodnicka, founder of MK Catalyst. Thank you for good discussion. My question is, what one thing you did last year, or 2025, that you think moved the needle, that if we implemented that in 26, we'll get closer? Thank you.
I'll take Subsea 7 put in an upstander program called 7 Ally, and 3,000 people between last year and where we are now this year have gone through that. We need to remember, we come from a male-dominated construction industry, so people work 6 weeks off and 6 weeks on offshore, so it's a very, very different environment. And we needed to do a lot of work to help people understand how we are going to make sure that we get through the changes that we need to do, and different countries have different expectations of how people behave and what they need to do. So we put that program in across the group, and we're going to keep pushing it right the way across the fleet. That's been the biggest change, because everybody is talking about the topic now. That's the key to it. It's not a certain group of people talking about the topic. Everybody is talking about the topic. And we have seen a real good uptake in, okay, now I understand that some behaviours are not acceptable. And this came from the work in Australia. Australia in particular had a very difficult attitude towards construction in particular. And there was some fantastic learning out of that we took into the UK and then we've sent around the globe. So my answer would be an upstandard programme.
Any others?
I would say that I put quite a lot of effort into making sure I had lots of women in the book, and I hope that anyone that reads it, any maybe younger woman, would unconsciously get that message that this is an industry for them as well. So that's one thing. I'm not sure I can repeat it next year.
I suppose mine's a bit of a quick win, but I joined the Powerful Women Network and decided to become an ambassador. So yeah, I'm just going to keep speaking about it on every single panel I sit on now. So shamelessly plug it everywhere. So yeah.
And I'm going to jump in on this one if I may. We at the Energy Institute introduced equal parental leave. We spent a lot of time as a charity saying, oh, it's too difficult, it's too expensive, we can't afford it. We figured out we needed to afford it and make it work, and we had our first male taking extended parental leave earlier this year, and hopefully many more to follow.
I mean, from a government point, I could read out some of the sort of classic things that we've already seen. But exactly, that's I'm not going to do that. I guess personally, actually, I realise that I find the gender work of my responsibilities is always on the important but not urgent list. And so what I've tried really hard this year is to force myself to do it by putting myself on panels. And the ambassadors work, making sure we put ourselves forward as a co-chair, that kind of thing, to basically suddenly make it become urgent in my diary. And I think it's just trying to make that shift, I guess.
I'm going to come in a minute to the questions on slide, and I've got some direct questions to two of the panellists, but the gentleman just here, I think has got a question, and then any hands over there for questions?
Hi. I thought the panel was fantastic, so thank you very much. My question is about conversation a little bit earlier about, you spoke about the facts, like the truth of the energy transition and DI in businesses. I think my question comes from the background of we spoke about owning the narrative and telling the story. It feels sometimes like the story exists, the truth is out there, and yet we're still stuck at 30%. We still don't engage with climate in the way that we should. So I guess my question is, what do we do when the truth doesn't seem to be enough?
Tough question.
It's a big question for 2:50 on a Wednesday. Who's going to tackle that one?
I'll maybe just start. I think society and managing transitions is always difficult. Always difficult. Whichever way you go through history, it's always been difficult. People like to have stability and not too much change, right? Most people are okay in that world where the light comes on and I can watch TV. And so transitions are complex. There are different agendas. We've heard it today. Different people have different agendas and different ways of looking at it. And I think we need to recognize that that is society, if you know what I mean. Society sometimes is very interested in this. Society is very interested until my gas bills go up, and then I'm not interested in it. Society sometimes gets completely knocked sideways by some event that occurs. So I think we need to keep just going and keep talking. I said earlier, the world will need more energy. So everything that is on the table today will be there in some percentage in the future. We need to make sure the transition keeps moving and moving ahead, and there'll be setbacks. There are setbacks in any form of a major change that society goes through. So for me, it's about also don't get knocked off your the direction you're trying to travel. And every now and again, the winds might buffet you, and you might go a bit left and you might go a bit right. But I think we all know around this panel what we need to do. Powerful Women is a great tool that allows a number of the senior companies here in the UK to say we keep working on the topics that are on the table and we keep persevering with it. I unfortunately don't think there's an easy switch to go to get that change that you're asking the question, but maybe I'm wrong.
I'll add, sorry, as well as talking, I would say listening. So listening patiently to, and respecting everyone's views and opinions on this, because if we don't understand what the barriers are and why people aren't understanding what we're saying, we need to listen to be able to address those concerns, and it will take time.
I think there's a big difference between talking about things at a sort of high level and then making it actually personal. And I think I completely agree with people who don't like change. In general, it's much easier just to not have to deal with change, right? But also everyone loves having a cool new thing. So it's connecting the two things. It's the connecting, if people talk about, your gas bills have gone up and it's all climate change's fault, all net zero's fault. But then also people are really impressed when you get solar panels, or they got, you've got heat. Oh, you can cool it as well as heat it, and that's exciting. So I think it's about stop just talking in kind of global terms and try and really connect it down. And so, and if even on the tradwife point, right, going back to your first terrifying statistic, I think even if you are quite, you think that is the woman's place, if your friend got a really cool job as an engineer, who's a woman, got a cool job as an engineer, you're still going to be really happy for them. So it's about how do you make it less about we need to have, EDI in our workforce, and more about, there's a really cool job out there that your friend can get, or my cousin's got, and that's great, I'm really happy for them.
Brilliant. I've got two questions I don't want to ignore from Slido. One to John and one to you, Marina. So there's somebody that's written in saying that they work on a dive boat, they're on a day rate, and they can't have children, or they have to give up their job. I don't think it's a Subsea 7 dive boat, but
Probably is.
and there's language like NRB, which is not required back, which is an oft-used term for people on day rates. I mean, there's a whole group of people that are outside of this. Quick fire.
I think, as I said in one of the previous questions, our industry works on 6 weeks on and 6 weeks off. It is a very, very difficult environment that our industry has. We have done a huge amount of work over the last 20 years to make that more appealing. But I would turn the question around the other way. I have plugged nothing, but all I'm going to plug now is this is a fantastic industry to be part of, to have an opportunity to take your career and go and see the world and work all around the world and do great things. It is a tough environment to work in. It is not, you're living on a tin box. A dive ship is 100 meters by 30 meters, and you live there for 6 weeks at a time with another 100 people, right? So society is a bit different out there because you have to live in a quasi-naval type environment. So for me, I think the challenge we have as an industry is to make that appealing and make that interesting. My biggest challenge in our sector is the male to female ratio offshore is 97:3, right? Yeah. That's the issue, right? That's the issue. I am losing out on half the people in the world, i.e. females, to work for us offshore. So since I've been on Powerful Women, I've said, as much as we're working onshore to help everybody, we need to be able to make that offshore work environment more appealing and more interesting, because that's the opportunity set our industry has to do that. Because a lot of this new energy comes from offshore. People don't want wind farms next door to the house, but they'll take a big wind farm 10 miles offshore any day. So again, for me, it is an industry that's in change and is changing, but the underlying environments we work in aren't the easiest.
Marina, quick fire one to you. There's been some changes in government about affinity groups meeting, the times that they can meet. Any comments on that?
So which groups, sorry?
So groups for different forms of DEI. There's some restrictions on when they can and can't meet. I mean, is there a quick fire response on that?
Oh, I haven't prepared my whatever line I'm going to say on that. I can tell
you can speak freely as a human.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to speak freely as a human.
Or you can decline the question.
So yeah, there's guidance has come out, and we have all absolutely implemented it. I have to say that as a department, the commitment to ensuring that everybody's everybody can bring their whole self to work has remained absolutely 100%. So where things have needed to change in terms of how things are working, that has happened in a quite sensible way, and you can actually still adhere to the guidance while actually achieving your aims. You just got to be quite clear on what you're actually trying to achieve at what point and how you do it. But in some ways, they're sort of making us all look again at what we're all doing and making sure that whatever we're doing when we're meeting is actually really useful, or whatever time we're doing it, it's valuable, has been a good one. And I certainly within my department, I've seen we have applied the guidance well, but it's not been to the detriment of achieving the outcomes that we want.
Perfect. I think that was a good political response. Well done. Or a civil service response, I should say. We're at time. I just want to go very quickly, 30 seconds max per panellist. Your call for action today for Powerful Women to hit its 2030 40% targets. Simon.
Mine's obvious. It's going to be go leave your ego at the door. Oh, sorry, leave your silo at the door, and you can leave your ego.
And your ego too.
Yeah.
Okay, Yasmin.
I will just do one of my 2 points. I would say mentor and support each other. That's something I've benefited from and I try to pass down. And I wanted to read a quote from the Leaders Coalition report that I really liked. It said, "The future of energy will be written by those who act now. So let's not put it off and do it now."
Love it. John?
Keep persevering. It's choppy out there. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things going on, but keep doing what we're doing and we will achieve our objectives by 2030.
Marina?
Where you see something that you think could genuinely make the difference either to you or to your colleagues, don't hide it. Just make sure you tell someone. You don't lose anything by telling someone, even if it doesn't happen. That's where you are at the moment. Just don't think it in your head and then think, oh, I wish that had happened, and then move on. Tell someone.
Fantastic. Thank you. Panellists, please do stay on stage, but if I could just ask the audience to say a big thank you to our brilliant panel. So we're coming up to a break. We're sort of reached the end of sort of the formal part of the conference, and we'll be going into workshops. On behalf of Monica and the Powerful Women Board, I just wanted to say a few words. I want to thank all of our brilliant speakers today. I think the level of sophistication in this conversation has evolved. This is my 5th conference. It has evolved and progressed each year. I have a long list of reflections. I won't go through all of them. Just a couple to share. I just think it is outrageous that we're still talking about toilets in 2025, as we heard from the Minister this morning. I mean, the one bit of, it was nice that Monica didn't have to talk about that, but we should not be talking about toilets in offshore wind turbines in this day and age and elsewhere in the industry. There's been a really strong theme about family, which I think is really good to hear. We heard some of that from Dan, we heard it from others. I love the point that Gamal made earlier on the leadership scores. So I am reviewing my own leadership score, that we're all rating ourselves 4s and 5s when we're actually at 2s and 3s. And I think there's a bit of humility that some of us need to reflect upon, which I shall. We've talked about how we engage the sort of broader sector and the elephants that aren't in the room, and that's some work that Powerful Women is working on. I love the brilliant jerk point, and I think there's a reality that our organisations are only as good as our most brilliant jerk, and that's sort of, it is the lowest common denominator actually that sets the tone for an organisation. And I think that's a really valuable point. And we've heard some really strong calls for action. So please share your perspectives today on social media. If you haven't already, please just keep today going on. The whole event will be available on replay for you to look, share with colleagues, share with those that haven't been able to join us. At this point, very shortly, we'll be saying thank you to our online audience. So thank you for staying with us all morning and for the first part of the afternoon to all of you online. I'll very briefly talk about the workshops in a moment, but just to wrap up, I do want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors, all of our amazing speakers, the Powerful Women team, Georgina and Natalia in particular, the Energy Institute team that's also supported them. And most of all, thank you all for spending a day out of your busy schedules to join us today. We really do appreciate everybody coming and engaging so powerfully throughout the day. And thank you for all that you're doing on this journey. So thank you, everyone. You can clap now, everybody. Clap yourselves. So I think Lisa and I are going to try and explain what's going to happen next. So first, you've got a half-hour coffee break, so please network and catch up with people you haven't spoken with yet. And then afterwards, we have got 5 workshops. Workshop A, From Passion to Performance, Unlocking the True Value of Employee Networks, which is along the corridor, past registration. You can see why I'm not doing the waving. Workshop B, Operational Equity in Energy, Removing Barriers for Women in Fieldwork, which is along the corridor past the conference suite at the very end room, so over that way. Workshop C, Empowered Conversations, along corridor past registration, that way again. Strategic Network, Workshop D, again along past registration, that way, so thank you. And finally, What About Men, Gender, Allyship and Harmony in Volatile Times, also that way. If you're not sure on that, please ask at the registration desk, and people far more competent than me will be able to guide you. So thank you so much, everyone, and hope that you'll be staying for the workshops.